Oh, folks, we're getting awfully close to the end of our book. Um, I'm probably going to try to read all of these chapters together, even though there are 9 chapters left. Um, I guess if you don't want to listen to all of them at the same time, you can just stop in the middle and come back. We're getting so close to the end, and I'm anxious for y'all to hear what happens. Does anybody know what happened yet? I don't know. We'll see. If you've got it figured out, you need to let me know, okay? Because it's supposed to be a mystery. No, I guess it's not really supposed to be a mystery. It's just a book. Anyway, we're going to start out right now with chapter 5. There are only 14 chapters in this section. Remember, we're in the winter, and it is a Christmas wish. I wonder what Mandy's wishing for. Here we go. Mandy, I want you to meet Jonathan. Anne's voice was happy as she came into the bedroom. Jonathan, this is Mandy. Mandy put aside the book that she had been reading. Her heart beat a little faster. How do you do, Jonathan? Hi. His voice cracked with enthusiasm and ended up somewhere in his boots. Jonathan cleared his throat and took her extended hand in his somewhat moist one. Mandy had the impression of a tall, gangling boy, his dark hair falling loosely across his forehead, with ruddy cheeks and his mother's very clear blue eyes. He was dressed in his school uniform, but was obviously restless and probably aching to put on some more comfortable clothes. His mother anticipated this. You'll want to change, darling, but will you have some lemonade or something first? I'd love it. He moved to the window and looked eagerly out across the park, his hands thrust deep in his pockets. Oh, Mom, this is super. He whirled on Mandy. Don't you like it? Mandy had a hard time finding her voice. Never had she met anyone who exuded so much energy. He dominated the entire room. If only he weren't so tall. She was a little frightened. Oh yes, I mean, what I've seen of it, I like, she stammered and wished she could appear calm and not too shy. Perhaps later on, when Mandy's able to get up, you'll show her around the house, John. She might enjoy it. Anne watched both children closely. Yes, all right. He stood nonchalantly looking at her. A couldn't care less attitude. When would you like to do that? He asked. It won't be possible for a day or two, John. Anne spoke quickly. Maybe tomorrow at the earliest. Okay. A pause. Then, we'll see you later. A remote, casual wave, and he was gone, although Mandy felt his presence still lingering in the room. Anne smiled a secret sort of smile. She winked at Mandy and said, I'll be back soon, darling. Then she hurried out after the boy. Mandy was left with a distinctly stunned feeling. She wasn't sure what she had expected, but this boy, this mixture of grace and awkwardness, self-contained and yet so full of life, was certainly not what she had anticipated at all. For the rest of the day, she lay in bed, listening to every footstep that passed her door and praying that Jonathan wouldn't come back into her room. He didn't. But she could hear him about the house. The place seemed to come alive now that he was home. She could hear Bill laughing in a downstairs room and the boy explaining something in detail and laughing about it too. It sounded as if he were telling about some escapade at school. At dinner time, she heard the bright chatter and the clink of silver and plates coming from the dining room. It made her feel lonely and sad and left out. Later, when Anne came to sit with her for a while, she lay listlessly against the pillows, quieter than usual. Anne curled up in a chair by the fire and tucked her legs underneath her. "It's fun having Jonathan home." "Yes." Mandy hesitated, then bravely lied. "He seems very nice." "Well, you hardly got a chance to say hello to him at all." Anne smiled at Mandy, then leaned on the arm of the chair and said in a quieter voice, "He's rather bouncy, isn't he, though?" "Oh, well, I think if I were your age, I'd be rather overwhelmed by him." Mandy was surprised. Anne had touched on the very thing that she was feeling. Suddenly, it became easy to talk. "It's just that, well, I got sort of frightened. I don't know why." She laughed nervously. "Oh, I do, Mandy. You've been waiting to see our son, whom you know I adore, and you must wonder if he'll like you. Then in he comes, full of energy. You feel you should try to like him because he belongs here. It must be very intimidating, especially after your illness. He must make you feel you could never keep up with him." Mandy thought about it, digesting what Anne had just said. It was, indeed, the way she felt. "Just remember one thing, Mandy." Anne looked at her fondly. "He's probably just as worried about you." "Oh?" Mandy was astonished. Why, yes. He's wondering if you'll like him and how he fits in here with you around, particularly since he's been away at school." She leaned forward and stirred the dying embers of the fire with a poker. "It will take time for you to learn to like each other. You mustn't worry if it doesn't happen. You may find you'd rather keep to yourself until you go back to the orphanage. It's not going to upset Bill or me." Then she changed the subject. "I wondered if you'd like to get up for a little while tomorrow. I thought maybe we could celebrate your getting better and John's being home, and all have dinner together downstairs tomorrow evening. We could really bundle you up warmly, and Samson could light a big fire in the lounge just for an hour or so." Though Mandy would rather have stayed in bed in her comfortable, safe room, she felt she couldn't hurt Anne by refusing the invitation. So she said politely, "Yes, thank you, that would be very nice." She hoped the evening wouldn't prove too much of an ordeal, with Jonathan there and everything. As it turned out, the evening was a smashing success. Mandy hadn't realized how thrilling it would be to see the downstairs of the big house. There was so much to do and talk about that she hadn't a chance to feel shy. Anne insisted she take a nap in the late afternoon. She bathed and tidied herself afterward, and when Bill came to take her downstairs, she was feeling refreshed and, secretly, rather excited. He made a tremendous fuss, taking her arm and leading her down the big staircase with so much ceremony that Mandy felt as though she were being escorted to a very special party. As she descended the stairway, she looked about her in awe. The main hall was tremendous, 3 flights of wide, shallow stairs on 3 sides of a stairwell. The banister beneath her hand was solid and smooth, the wood polished to a high gloss. On the 4th side of the stairwell, a tremendous tapestry was hanging. Portraits lined the other walls, each one separately lit from above and glowing in the evening dusk. A thick carpet lay beneath Mandy's slippered feet. At the bottom of the stairs, Anne and Samson were waiting for her. She smiled nervously and clung to Bill's hand. She was trembling a little. though whether from excitement or the fact that it was her first time downstairs, she couldn't tell. Samson pushed open two huge doors, and the small party moved into the lounge. It was a beautiful room, long and narrow. A big fire was burning in the grate. There were comfortable furnishings with deep, soft cushions and fresh flowers in vases about the room. Jonathan sprang up out of a chair as they entered. "Well, John, here's the young lady," Bill said. "We can go in to dinner now. Hungry, Amanda?" Mandy smiled at Bill's correct use of her name. "Maybe just a tiny bit," she said, trying to sound enthusiastic. "Well, I'm starving." Jonathan led the way to another series of double doors and opened them wide. They opened onto a small dining room. There was a table set for 4 people. Dishes were steaming over hot plates on a long sideboard. Beyond the table were more double doors and a smaller door set into the left wall. Jonathan explained, "That door leads to the hall again, Mandy, and look here." He pushed open the second set of double doors and stood back. Mandy gasped. She was looking into a vast, long room, obviously a larger, formal dining room. Marble pillars at either end rose to the exquisite plaster ceiling above. A huge refectory table in the center ran almost to the far wall, and the room had the same beautiful windows as the lounge. "You know your way around already," Anne spoke to Jonathan as they seated themselves for dinner. "I'm not surprised," Bill interrupted. "I haven't seen him all day. Have you been exploring?" Jonathan grinned. "Yep, I found a secret passageway too." "Oh, where?" "Between the second and third floors." Bill smiled. "Oh, that one?" The boy's face registered total surprise. "You mean there's another one?" I'm not going to tell you." "Oh, Dad, where?" "Wait and see." The boy squirmed and howled in protest as his father teased him. Anne laughed and Mandy joined in. She couldn't help it. Bill looked wickedly at them all, his eyes gleaming with merriment. "I'll tell you tomorrow, John. Then you can show Mandy." "Oh, please tell us now," Mandy spoke up. She, too, was anxious to know where a secret passageway might be. "In the back of a cupboard in our bedroom, there's a door that gives access to a passageway. It leads to another cupboard in the big guest bedroom. Long ago, the lord of the manor could visit his lady without having anyone know about it. Clever, wasn't it?" "Bill, I don't think even you know where all the nooks and crannies are in this house." Anne smiled across at him. "I don't." Dinner progressed. It was a joyous affair. Mandy found that she had 100 questions to ask. She completely forgot her shyness and found herself laughing and giggling and chatting with great zest. Anne looked lovingly at the group around the table. "It is really nice being together like this," she said. "Here is a toast to Mandy." Bill suddenly lifted his glass. Jonathan and Anne paused to do the same. "We're glad that you're better and delighted to have you with us this evening." "Oh, thank you." Mandy's face was rosy with happiness. After dinner, Anne led the way through the main lounge to the library. "Here, Mandy, you want to see another secret of the house? Look at this." She pressed a button in the molding on the wall, and the entire panel slid back to reveal a small pipe organ nestled in an alcove. It was of the same wood as the library paneling, but painted with gold leaf embellishments. 2 pretty candle brackets were attached to the music stand. A small bench covered in soft rose-colored silk straddled the petals on the floor. "How absolutely beautiful," Mandy breathed. "This was put in the house by one of Bill's eccentric ancestors." Anne smiled across at him. Bless the old gentleman. Where are the pipes? Up there and there. Anne pointed to the wall high above the organ. A lot of them are behind the paneling, but see, just by the ceiling, you can see the tops of them. Play it, Mother, Jonathan begged. Oh, please. Mandy couldn't wait to hear it. Well, some of the stops are missing, but it does still function. We'll have it restored properly one day. Anne slid onto the stool and pulled at the knobs and touched some buttons. She let her hands run over the keys. Warm, golden sounds poured forth with the wonderful, breathless quality that is so characteristic of a pipe organ. Here, John, you know this one. Anne began to sing and play an old English melody. Jonathan and Bill joined in, their voices blending with hers. Mandy listened with delight. It was a lusty country song, and it ended with them all collapsing in laughter. Jonathan tried to reach a high note, and his voice cracked dismally, quite ruining the melodic effect. Do you know any songs, Mandy? Anne asked. Only hymns, mostly. Like what? Oh, gosh, I can't remember any right now. She was suddenly shy again. Let's sing some carols, Jonathan suggested. That's right, it's nearly Christmas, Bill agreed. Carols couldn't be more appropriate. Anne played Good King Wenceslas and In the Bleak Midwinter and We Three Kings. Everyone sang loudly, and in spite of her shyness, Mandy found herself joining in. The acoustics carried her sweet soprano voice and enhanced it. The others fell silent to listen to her as she sang. Mandy thought she had never been so happy in her life, and with the thought came a sadness, too. She knew that she would have to return to the orphanage soon, and that this happiness would end. Her voice faded as the song finished. Anne noticed the little girl's forlorn expression. That's enough for tonight, she said. This poor thing will collapse if we play too much. She touched a button and the organ rolled back into the alcove. The panel slid into place again, completely concealing it from view. This procedure was enough to distract Mandy from her own thoughts, and within seconds she had brightened. I think it's time for one young lady to get back into bed. Bill swept Mandy up in his arms. Are you tired, Mandy? No, she giggled as he held her. Tell you what, said Anne. You go and get into bed, Mandy, and I'll bring you up some hot tea with lemon and honey. How would you like that? Lovely, thank you. Can I have some, Mother? Jonathan wanted to know. Yes, you great lump, you may have some too. And so it was. Mandy climbed in her warm, comfortable bed. Bill and Anne sat by as she and Jonathan drank the steaming liquid from big china mugs. Later, when they had all gone and she was left alone in the darkness, she relived every moment of the wonderful evening. It had been better than any other party could ever possibly be. She would remember it all her life. She purposely shut out all thoughts of the orphanage and her imminent return. It snowed the following day. Great white flakes drifted down, creating a new world outside the house. Inside it was warm and cozy. Anne was triumphant. I told you it would snow soon. We're going to have a white Christmas. I just know it. She insisted that Samson light big fires in all the main rooms. Drafts from the chimneys caused the wood smoke to spiral slowly to the ceiling from time to time. It made the house smell wonderful. By mid-afternoon, the countryside was covered with 2 to 3 inches of virgin snow. Every tree was traced in white, and the branches of the fir trees bowed down with the weight. The banks of the stream became softly contoured. The formal garden all but disappeared. Black crows winged across the white fields, their voices cawing and harsh in the silence. It was a picture postcard scene. Jonathan was out all morning, bundled up and ruddy-faced. He and Brendan, the groom, made a huge snowman in the stable yard. At lunchtime, John bounced into the house, trailing snow behind him and leaving wet footprints in the main hallway. His mother reprimanded him in no uncertain terms. Mandy slept late and remained in her room until after lunch. Then she, too, dressed warmly and was allowed downstairs. Jonathan approached her. He seemed in unusually good spirits. Mother says maybe you'd like to see the rest of the house. Mandy's heart jumped. Did he really want to show her, or had Anne insisted? She couldn't tell from his expression. She hoped she need not stay with the boy for long. Seeing him in the company of his mother and father was one thing, but she knew she'd be miserably shy and nervous if she were with him alone. Her spirit sank as Jonathan led her off down a corridor. He took her into a big, unused kitchen that in olden times had been the busiest place in the house. It had a huge fireplace and an iron pulley over it that must have held the sides of the beef and pork for roasting. There were great black ovens and marble counters and wooden chopping blocks, and there was a big skylight overhead. Jonathan's voice echoed through the room. Dad says this will be the first room he'll restore when he can. Where's the kitchen that you use now? Mandy felt lost and small. In the pantry. Well, it used to be the pantry. Come on, I'll show you the rest. The boy went tearing off down the hall. Mandy breathlessly tried to keep up with him. She was too shy to ask him to slow down a little. He took her to the top floor of the house. Here were the small rooms where the servants had once lived. The only advantage of being so high in the big house was the splendid view it afforded. Mandy pressed her nose to a window pane and wondered if she could see the orphanage across the trees. But it was snowing so hard that any view was obliterated. Jonathan showed her the secret passageway he had discovered between the second and third floors. It had a small spiral staircase, no more than 1.5 feet wide, and it was very dark. Jonathan plunged ahead, leaving Mandy to find her own way. Suddenly, in the darkness, she became terrified. Groping her way downward step by step, she had the feeling she would never get out. Jonathan! She screamed his name. She heard him running back to the foot of the stairs. What is it? Help me, please. I'm frightened. She began to cry and stood where she was until she heard him in the darkness climbing back up to her. She felt his strong hand grasp hers. It's all right, Mandy. Just one more corner and there's light on the stairs. Come on now. Gently he led her safely down, and she stumbled out into the hallway, gasping for air. Jonathan saw her white face and felt compassion for her. Are you all right? He asked anxiously. Yes, thank you. She bravely tried to stop crying. Jonathan looked at Mandy as if seeing her for the first time. To his surprise, he became aware that she was a person with feelings and instincts and thoughts. Until now, she had seemed to him to be just a silly girl who happened to be visiting for a while. Here, Mandy, I know what you'd like. Come and see something. He took her downstairs, this time staying close by her side. Mandy was beginning to feel really tired, but she went along. He took her to the doorway leading to the stable yard. Look, Jonathan pointed outside, and she saw the snowman he had built. It was a ridiculous snowman, straw hair sticking out under a riding hat with a whip in his hand. Already he was half covered with fresh snow. Mandy began to laugh. He looks huffy, sort of angry. Well, so would you be if you had to stand out there in the cold all the time, Jonathan smiled. Anne came down the passageway. She called anxiously, Mandy, come away from that door. It's much too drafty there. Her voice was sharp. Really, John, you ought to know better. Mandy was exhausted. Anne noticed the circle under her eyes and suggested she rest for a while. Mandy willingly complied and went upstairs. When Anne looked into her room, only seconds later, she had already fallen into a deep sleep. You know, folks, I said I was going to finish this book tonight, but I think I'm starting to feel like Mandy. I am getting tired, and I think I'm going to fall into a deep sleep. I wish I had somebody to read me a story. Oh, well, I'll read me a story tomorrow. I hope y'all are enjoying this book as much as I am. Mandy is an amazing little girl. I wonder, even when you have a big old family and people are all around, sometimes you can feel lonely like Mandy does. Sometimes you can feel like you're not a part like Mandy does. So I don't know. We'll just have to see what happens next. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Night.